Well, good evening, everyone. This is Mother Teresa, and it is time to grandstand with Mother Teresa. It is 7 o'clock Tuesday evening. So again, that means that it's time to grandstand. I'm going to give you a little bit of time to come on in, go grab your favorite snack, your favorite beverage, call a friend, share the live with someone, tell them that Mother Teresa is grandstanding. And grandstanding tonight, we're going to be talking about celebrating milestones. And every milestone is a stepping stone to greatness. I already see that the first person that is logged in is my precious mama. So, hey, mama, glad to have you live with us on tonight. Hopefully some more of my family members and my friends will be able to join in with us on tonight. Make sure you send me a comment, give me some feedback. Let me know that you are watching. Let me know that what I'm saying, if it makes sense to you, please chime in. If you don't agree with what I'm saying, that's all right too. Again, as I always state, that Mother Teresa is me. When I'm here, I am a licensed professional mental health person, a social worker, a licensed professional social worker. But when I'm grandstanding, I'm just Mother Teresa. I'm just sharing with you some of the things, the experiences that I've experienced in my life, and also give you some strategies and some tips. So, not here as a professional therapist, not here as a clinician. Again, don't tell someone you went to see your therapist on Tuesday night, because that's not what I'm here for. I am here strictly to share with you some information about grandstanding and some life application things. So again, tonight we're talking about milestones and how we celebrate some of the milestones that are in our lives. And what are some of the things that we celebrate? What are some of the big things that you celebrate in your life? I'm going to share with you some things that I've celebrated. And then I'm going to ask you to chime in and tell me some of the things that you celebrate and how you celebrate those things. Typically, when we talk about our milestones, and let me grab my little notes, because remember I told y'all last week that I have my little notes. I don't want to come empty-handed. Usually I write out a couple of things that I want to be sure to share with you all. And if we get to them, that is absolutely great. If I get started on a tangent, how mothers can do, then that's all right too. But typically when we are looking at our milestones, celebrating the milestones in our lives, we are basically reflecting on the momentous events that have happened in your life. Now, let me just say this. Most of us as individuals, we share some commonalities, some of the milestones that we may celebrate, but however, we may celebrate them differently. But we still have some things that we celebrate typically, just kind of across the board. One of the things that we typically celebrate, thank you, Miss Net. One of the things that we typically celebrate that I just recently celebrated was a huge milestone in my life. I turned 60 years old, and I can just see the stars and the flags and the hand clapping and the hearts. And so that you all are giving me because I celebrated turning 60 years old. And you may say, Mother Teresa, you don't look 60 years old, but I am. My mom is here as a witness to share. Yeah, there we go. There are the hearts. My mom is here as a witness to celebrate that I turned 60 years old on the 21st of December. Let me tell you a little bit. I asked my mom about me being born, and I was born at home. I was her only child that was born at home. And what she shared with me when I talked to her about this is that because her mom had her children at home, I think the majority of her kids at home, that she wanted to experience having a child at home as well. So guess what? I was that experiment that she had on Castleberry Street in the wintertime. It was me. I was that little baby girl. But my mom also shared with me that after I was born, She discovered that that's not what she wanted to do, and she had the rest of her children in a hospital. But I had a midwife that was there with me, well, with my mom to help deliver me. And I am so very thankful that she decided to have that experiment, because guess what? When we talk about our uniqueness and we talk about the things that make us different, that is one of the things that is different about me, is that I was the only child that was born at home. Okay. So going back to being born, one of the things that I like to do with my children is I tell them their birth story. Now, listen, when we talk about the birth story, what I try to do is to share with my children, the day that they were born or the events that led up to their birth. And I try to give them the time, or I try to call them on the exact time that they were born. And of course, I have to wake them up because all of my children were born early morning. And so I have to wake them up, and I share with them some of the things that happened on the day that they were born or the days leading up to it. And I can tell you that it gives me great pleasure in being able to share with my children their birth story. And I can tell you that for me, it takes me back. It takes me back to when my first child was born, Annette. And then, of course, my second child, Candace, it takes me back. And then, of course, it takes me back to when Will was born. All very different circumstances, all very different experiences, all very different stories. And I just enjoy being able to tell them their birth story. And this is just one of the things that I would like to challenge you all to do when we're talking about celebrating milestones. If you haven't started sharing with your children their birth story, please come up with their birth story. And I say come up with it because some of you all are going to have to remember a little bit further back than others. Because if I had my mom to tell me my birth story, my mom is going to have to remember back 60 years ago, whereas with Will, I'm just remembering 20 years ago. So some of the things that I can remember may not have to go back as far as my mom. And speaking of my birth story, this year, one of the things that I experienced with my baby girl, Candace called me and she shared with me a little bit of my birth story. Now, she didn't call and talk to mom. She didn't get any information, but it was just information that she knew of. And so in her own way, Candace gave me a little bit of my birth story. And so I challenge you, Candace, is to get with mama and get the rest of the birth story. So for next year, either mom can call me or Candace can give it, or Ned or Will, but someone is going to share with me a little bit more about my birth story. So that is something, that's a freebie that I'm giving to you all that are listening. If you haven't started telling your children their birth story, that is the greatest milestone that I can share with you all, is to talk about the birth, talk about being born. And one of the things that we all celebrate our birthdays in totally different manners, which is okay, but just make sure you're celebrating it, okay? And another thing that I would like to share with you all, another milestone, is learning when you are learning to walk and talk. Now, for most of you all, you're not going to remember when that was. But if you have your parents or you have people in your lives that can share with you when you started talking and when you started walking, that is another milestone that we typically celebrate. How many of you all that have children can remember when those kids started walking, how excited we were? We were clapping for them. We were edging them on. We were telling them to come on, you can do it. It was a major production. It was a major milestone when our kids started walking. And then, oh my goodness, when they started talking, that was another milestone. Now, right now in our family, we have my sugars, which are the twin girls. So Avi and Amani, of course, they are walking. They will be 2 in January. So they are still doing a little bit of babbling. They do have some words in their vocabulary, but they are not having where we can just fully understand them yet. And I say yet. But I can only imagine when those little girls start talking, they're going to be just like their mama, who loves to talk. And she says she's an introvert, but don't believe that. Listen, Candace loves to talk, and I can just imagine that those girls will love talking as well. So those are 2 of the things that I wanted to share with you all. Just starting right off the top is being born and learning to walk and talk. Now, there are some other things, some milestones that we typically share or we remember, and one being starting to school. Starting to school. How many of you all remember your first introduction to school? Whether it was daycare, whether it was kindergarten, or whatever. Some of us, we started out in daycares. I remember my siblings and we went to Miss Bertie Mae Kennedy. And some of you all, is it Bertie Mae or Vertie Mae? But some of you all that are maybe some of my classmates or some of the people that are in Nacogdoches, you all also may remember going to Miss Bertie Mae's daycare as well. But I also remember when I went to public school. And the very first public school that I went to that I can remember as a first grader was Nettie Marshall. And I can remember being at Nettie Marshall the 1st through the 5th grade. I can remember some of my teachers. I can remember what they look like. I can remember their personalities. I can remember their temperaments. How many of you all remember your elementary teachers? And if you do remember them, give me some stars, give me some hearts, give me something to let me know, thumbs up, or put your teacher's name in the chat. Now, my husband has an awesome memory, and he can tell me some of the teachers that he had. He can tell me some of the stories, some of the experiences that he had in elementary school. And so those are milestones. So when we're talking about celebrating milestones, starting to school is a huge milestone. Another one, since we're talking about starting school, is when we're making friends. When we are making friends at school, Ebony, you remember some of your friends when you first started school? My sister Cint is also watching. Cint, you do remember some of the friends that you had when you first started school? Those are milestones. And some of the friends that we made as in elementary school, for some of us, we still have those friends. We still have some of those same friends as adults. And so what I will say, Ebony said yes. What I will say is that if you have a friend that you have developed, that you developed while you were in elementary school, you are a rarity, because sometimes what happens is that we make those friendships in elementary school or junior high and high school. But after school is over, sometimes we never, ever see those people again. What I am finding, and I am so very thankful for Facebook, because a lot of the friends that Boris and I, and the classmates that Boris and I had when we were growing up, they are now our friends on Facebook. And so we have an opportunity to visit with them and chat back and forth with them and encourage them and say, hey, how are you doing? Or we're praying for you. Or, the different things that's happening in their lives, we're able to chime in on that. And they do the same for us. I know they have watched my son grow up on Facebook. And so many of my classmates, when they comment, they ask, how is my son doing? How are the grandkids doing? How is Ned doing? And that the ones that's asking about Ned is typically the ones that were my friends, my longtime friends, like Brenda Thomas And so she typically will ask, how is Ned? Or she remembers when we were in high school. And of course, I've shared with you all that Boris and I were teenage parents. So I had my daughter when I was in high school. So that is, I'm going to skip on down. That's another major milestone, is having children. And so, and when you have children, let me just tell you, your whole lifestyle changes. But that is a major, major life milestone in your life, is when you begin to start having children. Another milestone that you have in your life that I will say for me is experiencing the death of a loved one. And I will say experiencing the death of my father when I was really, really young. And I can tell you that you may say, well, how is that a milestone? It's a milestone because whether it was pleasant or not, it is something that has definitely had a impact on my life. And so dealing with death at a young age, or dealing with the death of a loved one, it impacts you. It gives you or forces you to learn coping skills, maybe coping skills that you had not had to put into play before you experience the death of a loved one. But, experiencing the death of a loved one is a major milestone. And while I'm there, not just a loved one, a human person, but even experiencing the death of a pet. And for some, their pets are just as important as that do not have children. They're just as important, or hold in their hearts like we hold our children, because their pets become a part of their family. And I can tell you that we had a dog, and his name was Deacon. And I can remember when we lost Deacon, that was a major milestone in our life, because we raised Deacon up with our girls. And so we had him such a long time. And when he passed away, or when he died, that was a major milestone in our life. Another thing is that in a major a major milestone in our life is that when we discover what we're good at, and we discover the things that make us go, or the things that bring joy to us. One of the things that I shared with you all last week is that, hey, Maria, how are you? One of the things that I shared with you all last week is that learning as a young person, what I felt like what's my calling, to be a social worker. Again, I shared with you all, I didn't know what it was called, but I knew what I wanted to do. But that was a major milestone in my life, learning something that I was good at. I knew that was something that I had a heart for, but learning those things that you're good at, whether it's a hobby or a sport or something like that, that is a great thing that you all will probably always remember, is when you discovered what you were good at. And since we're talking about when we were kids or when we were younger, another major milestone, and this is what we're talking about tonight, is the milestones that are in our lives, is guess what? When you're learning how to drive. Oh my goodness. For some, especially the teenagers, this is their first taste of independence. This is their first taste of freedom. This is their first taste of learning what it's like to be moving into adulthood, is learning how to drive, and those responsibilities that go along with learning how to drive. That is a huge milestone. And we typically will celebrate when our kids get that driver's permit. And then we tell our friends to watch out because they're on the roadways. So, but that is a major milestone that we typically celebrate in our lives, is when we learn how to drive. And of course, as we are moving on up the stages, the ages and the stages, is another milestone, is when we leave home. Now, let me tell you, that is a huge milestone, is when you are leaving home. And typically, when we see our kids leaving home, is that they've graduated from high school and maybe they're going off to college, or they may be getting married when they're leaving home, or they're going into maybe like an armed forces, or they're moving away for jobs or different things like that. but just leaving your parents' home is a huge milestone. And let me just tell you, for the parents that are on here that are listening right now, let's make sure that we prepare our children for when it's time for them to leave home. Let's make sure that we've put everything in them that they need to be successful. Let's make sure that we have trained them up, as the Bible says. Let's make sure that we have trained them up, that we've put in them the right things so that they will be successful. Our young men, they need to know certain things, how to do certain things, as well as our young girls. They need to know what it takes to be successful when they're out on their own. And we don't want to send them out unprepared, because the world is just waiting for them and they will just gobble them up and just spit them out. So let's put some things into them to make sure that they're ready. Okay. Another thing is, since you're out on your own right now, more than likely, you're going to start working. Okay. Remember I said, if you're going out, leaving home, maybe you're leaving home to go to a job. And one of the major life events for me is when I got my first paycheck. Okay. It wasn't very much at all. But when you get that first paycheck after you have started working, and then you start realizing that, hey, I have worked all week long and this is all that I have. Okay. All right. So parents, teach your kids about taxes. Teach them about what is going to be taken out of those paychecks. And also, this is another milestone that I can say, that when you get that first paycheck and you are now earning your own money, another thing is you're going to start learning the value of money. You understand that it took you to work all week long. And for some of you all, and I can talk about my son, I tell my son when he talks about buying a new pair of shoes or something like that, I let him know, Will, how long will it take you to work to be able to pay for that pair of shoes? And that's the kind of perspective I have to put it for him, because for him, who's been used to getting kind of whatever he wants without worrying about whose money he's spending, as long as it's not his, money doesn't mean a whole lot to him, or it did not until he started working on his own. And I had to start telling him, okay, son, if you want those $300 pair of shoes, guess what? You will be buying them. So a major milestone for him may have been making a major purchase, could have been buying a pair of shoes. Okay. So, and that's another milestone, is that when we begin to start making major purchases, how many of you all can remember the first thing that you purchased that was cost more than probably $100? You know, and I say a major, and you may say, oh, that's not major. But for some, it may be. For some, it may be. For others, it's you purchase your first car, okay? Your first home. Some, your first big flat screen smart TV. Whatever you purchase, what do you remember some of the things that you purchased that was a major purchase? That's a great, great milestone. And then let's talk about getting married. Let's talk about getting married. What kind of milestone is that? Well, first you probably, met someone that you wanted to marry. So a major milestone may have been falling in love with someone, or you could have been falling in love with someone and then had a major heartbreak. But even that, it's still a learning process. But I'm going to skip to getting married. That is a major milestone for most people. And it's something that you will remember, hopefully, for the rest of your life, even if it was a smaller wedding or a big extravagant wedding. Remember, when I talked about the milestones, most of us will share some similarities, but they may not look the same. So getting married is a major milestone for most of us. And so, and if you've been married for any length of time, I'm quite sure you remember your wedding day and the days that were leading up to your wedding day, and probably all the chaos or all the things that you had to put in place, the money that you had to spend, gathering everything, and just those feelings around getting married. So that's another major milestone. And of course, I talked about having children. For me, that was probably one of the biggest milestones, because it it changes your lifestyle. It changes everything about you when you become a parent. And so for some of you all that are parents, you all can chime in and you can just say, do you remember when you had that first child, that second child, the third, the fourth, and in my mom's case, the eighth? Having children and becoming a parent is a major, major milestone in our lives. And it's one that we definitely don't take lightly. And then, of course, after, a couple of more things is finding that right job, landing that right job, that your career path, something that you've decided that you wanted to do for the rest of your life. When we find that right job, that is a great milestone. And for some of us, it takes us maybe having a couple of jobs and determining, hey, this is not a good fit. Maybe this is not a good fit. But when you find that right one, that is going to be a major milestone in your life. After that, of course, after you've worked for a couple of years, another milestone in the natural progression of things is when you're getting ready for retirement. And I am almost at that stage now where it is retirement age, and still have a couple of more years that I'm wanting to work. But that is something that I am looking forward to, being able to retire. That's a major milestone. People work most of their lives with the goal of retiring, going into retirement and enjoying some downtime. So I know for some of you all that are my classmates, if you haven't already retired yet, then you're looking forward to that day. And as we talk about retirement, again, I'm talking about the natural stages of life's progression. After we retirement, or we get to the age that I am now, we start making sure that we've got our affairs in order. We start thinking about end of life things and how we want to make sure that we have prepared our family and prepared our children and prepared our, just our everything. So we start putting things in order. And then the other things, teach your children credit management and scores. Exactly. I can't see the rest of what it says, Bars, but definitely teaching your children about the different things. Again, that goes back to preparing your children for just life in general. And the other thing that I wanted to share with you all is that when I talk about major milestones, I touched a little bit a couple of sessions back, and I talked about, making a move to Baytown. That was probably one of the biggest milestones in my life, in my family's life, that I can say is that sometimes the things that we have in our lives are things that we don't necessarily plan for. But it's just a God thing. It's something that God just says, okay, I need you to do this. I need you to do that. And sometimes it's something that just kind of comes out of the blue. And sometimes it can be a little bit intimidating. It can make you kind of stop and think, is this something that I really want to do? Or because it wasn't a part of my plan. But then we have to know that God knows all. He knows our beginning and he knows our end. And so in all of those things that come in between, God has orchestrated those things. I shared with my granddaughter a couple of days ago about having to pivot. And so when I was sharing with her, I said, sometimes in life, we can have our plans. We can have everything that we think planned out how we want it to go. But then God does something, or something in our life, our experiences causes us to have to pivot. And when we pivot, it may not be something that we're happy about or excited about, but there is a great need for us to pivot, because God knows the goal. He knows what we are trying to accomplish. And so I said all that to say this, is that when we have to pivot in life, don't look at it as something that's negative, because I believe that everything in our life, absolutely, Angela, everything in our life happens for a reason. And so, when things are happening for a reason, what our responsibility to do is to ask God. We pray and we ask God, God, show me what you are trying to teach me in this season. What am I to learn in this season? How do I move forward? Give me the strength. give me the wisdom so I can be able to go through and do whatever it is that you are causing me to pivot for so I can be successful, because I want to be in your will. And so because I want to be in your will, God, then I need your help. And I can tell you that when we pray and we ask God to keep us in his will, that's all he's waiting for. So as we talk about the milestones and celebrating the milestones in our lives, one of the greatest milestones in my life is when I accepted Christ as my personal savior. I was 18 years old, did not know what to expect, but God had been dealing with me since I was a young girl that my life was going to end at 18 years old. So guess what? I was fearful of turning 18 years old. Little did I know that what God was sharing with me, or what God was trying to prepare me for, is that life as I knew it as Teresa Forney was going to change, that my life was going to change. I was going to die to sin, and that I was going to be born again. And so I can say that when God changed me, when God came into my life at 18 years old, then in essence, my old ways, they did die. In essence, I became a new creature. Not that I was bad, but that was a milestone. That was my formal introduction to changing into the person that God wanted me to be. And so I thank you all. I thank you all. Minutes ago, yes, Miss Eigner, my mom, she remembered her first grade teacher at Oak Ridge. Yes, yes. Thank you. Keep sending those things in. So again, tonight we were talking about celebrating milestones. So I hope that on tonight, as you have grandstand with Mother Teresa, that I've given you some things for you to think about, the different things that have happened in your life, and that you can go back and you can look at some of those things and you can reflect, and you can not only reflect on them in a good and positive way, but guess what? Look forward to the milestones that are continuing to happen in your life. And I thank you all for grandstanding with Mother Teresa. Again, this is where I am on Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. So thank you all again. Y'all have the most amazing evening, everybody. Thank you all for grandstanding. And we're going to go out with some music by my grandson. And we talk about milestones. Listen, you all, I'm appreciative of my grandson and this music because it is a milestone. All right, everybody, we'll see you all the next time. Don't forget to like and share this recording with others. And we'll see you next Tuesday. Bye-bye, everybody. Hey, Ebony and Cent, I'm so glad you all were here on tonight. Thank you all so very much for everyone. And if I didn't call your name, I appreciate you all being here, joining me on tonight. Thank you all so very much. I see some of my cousins on here. Kendra, I see Phyllis on here. Thank you all so very much. Some of Aunt Lou's girls. These are my cousins. Y'all share it with other people. Again, thank you all for grandstanding with Mother Teresa. Bye-bye, everybody. Good night.